Task Daemon addresses a fundamental problem with vibe coding, which is that for any project, as it approaches even moderate complexity, the number of components and dependencies and conventions and ways of doing things that we have has grown to such an extent that for any subsequent vibe coding prompt that we add, we know we won't be adding enough detail to that prompt to tell it how things already work. And so most likely the AI is going to make a new way of doing something every time we prompt it. Such that before you know it, our application has 4 different ways of doing notifications, 3 different ways of doing validation, and the whole thing becomes an unmaintainable mess. Now, recently it's been discovered that for most of the agentic AI coding assistant technologies, like Claude Code and Windsurf and anything like that, if you give them a detailed plan, rather than simply a 2-sentence description of what you want, but a detailed plan with numbered steps of what to do, they do a much better job of doing what you want first time without you having to go and thrash through it and give it subsequent follow-up prompts to get it to do the right thing. That's what Task Daemon does. Task Daemon takes those 2-sentence descriptions that we all want to write so that we can get the speed of vibe coding, and it uses a series of AI agents to blow those 2-sentence descriptions up to typically anything between a 200 and 1,000 line prompt that you can then copy and paste into Claude Code or Windsurf or whatever it is, and have high confidence that this prompt is highly specific and detailed to the combination of this task and your project, which Task Daemon has automatically understood through a process called characterization. So rather than talk about Task Daemon anymore, I want to show it to you instead. So I'm already logged in here on taskdaemon.ai. When I log in, I see the different projects that I've got going on. One of the first things I want to show is how we actually start a new project. And then I'll come back to one or two of the existing ones. So I'll go ahead and connect a GitHub repository this time. We can import from GitHub if we want. We can link the project to GitHub, and that will allow us to import issues. If, on the other hand, we want not to do that or to grant any permission to GitHub, then that's okay as well, and we'll see how that happens in a minute. But for now, I'm going to link my open source project called BragDoc across. This is on bragdoc.ai. It's open source, and it lets you basically keep a record of all of your work achievements and make like an easy weekly report you can send to your boss. When I imported this, I got asked, first of all, to start the characterization. Characterization is how Task Daemon understands what my project is. So I'm going to go ahead and click Start. At this point, I need to have a CLI agent running on my hardware, on my laptop. So Task Daemon is designed in such a way that we never get direct access to your code or your data. What it does instead is it talks to Claude Code, which is running on your laptop or some other hardware. And we have a conversation mediated via this Task Daemon AI CLI, which runs on your machine as well. And that's just a conduit to allow taskdaemon.ai to talk to Claude Code running on your machine. And so here, what the characterization agent in taskdaemon.ai is saying is, hey, Claude Code, please create me a characterization document for this bragdoc.ai thing. And if you don't already have the CLI tool installed, it's a very simple npm install. If I switch over into my terminal now, I can do a td login. I have the tool installed already. That will authenticate my CLI against Task Daemon. And then back in terminal again, I can do Task Daemon agent init. And that's going to go ahead and create a configuration file for Task Daemon within this repository. And we can see that it found, based on the remote of the Git repo, which project we just created in Task Daemon. It's linked the two together to this particular project ID on taskdaemon.ai. And it set up a few little config settings, like it can do multiple documents at the same time, and 2 plans and 1 implementation. So if we start the agent at this point, as asked to by the site, it's going to go and pick up, there's one available workflow, which is that first characterization prompt that we saw. So switching back into the website, I'll just refresh the page to see that we are now in progress on this document request. So under the covers now, what's happening is that Claude Code has been given this prompt, which is, hey, please give me a high-level overview of how BragDoc works. And this will typically run for about 2 minutes. And then it's going to spit out a document which goes back up to BragDoc, at which point the characterization agent is going to look at that document and try and decide, is that one document enough to fully characterize your project? Like if it's a simple project, then maybe it is. Or for something like BragDoc, probably it's going to say, there's a bunch more stuff here, like a data model and an API and testing, build, and all different types of scripts. And so maybe it needs a bit of further investigation. And so it'll ask for additional documents. But we'll see how it does that in a moment. In the meantime, this one we did connect to GitHub. And once characterization is finished, it will let us import the tickets. But we also have the option to do one that's a standalone project. And so I have another project called helpmefind.ai. And that really was just a project that I was messing around with to learn the Vercel AI SDK. So in this case, although it is in GitHub, I don't want to connect it to the GitHub issues. So I'm just going to create a project directly in TaskDemon. Go ahead and open that, start characterization again. And here, I didn't connect to GitHub, but I can come back into my terminal and go into Help Me Find and do a TD agent init in here. And I'll get an option this time because it couldn't match based on the Git remote, obviously. I'm going to choose number 2. And now start my agent. So this will go ahead and start the characterization process for Help Me Find. While in the other tab, you can see that we actually moved on to some additional documents now for the characterization of BragDoc. So if we switch back over to BragDoc and look at the characterization process, we can see that we got the first document done. It made us a document that gives us an overall characterization of BragDoc. So if we go take a look at that, it has done a reasonable job of figuring out, yep, it's a Next.js application with Drizzle, Nextauth, Vercel AI SDK, all this kind of high-level stuff. But then the characterization agent said, well, that's not actually enough information for me to thoroughly understand BragDoc, so please go ahead and create these additional documents as well. And so because our agent configuration allows 3 documents to be created simultaneously, right now we have 3 different Claude codes running, each of which will typically take 2 to 3 minutes each, servicing these document requests. And by the time it's gone through all of these other ones, characterization will be asked again, the characterization agent will be asked again, do you now understand everything that you want to understand? And most likely it will say yes, and it will say characterization complete. And at that point we can start to import our tickets. So while it's continuing to go through that, we can go back and check on our Help Me Find. In fact, this one has said that, has it assessed it yet? This one's also said that it wanted additional documentation, which makes sense. Help Me Find is also an application, so it wants API documentation, schema documentation, and so on. Fine. While we're waiting for those things to finish, though, let's take a look at TaskDemon itself. So I do, of course, use TaskDemon to build TaskDemon because it's much faster to do it that way. This is the actual live TaskDemon project details page. You can see that I was able to bang through a bunch of different tasks today, although I've been working on video stuff the last 4 hours, so that's why it kind of stopped showing any progress here. But this is an example of how it actually gets used in real life. So, for example, in the project agent screen down here, I find it enormously more intuitive to simply tell this agent what I want, and it will create a task for me rather than me going to GitHub and doing it. So I'll type in something like this, and it will create a task for me, which will be taken through various different stages. First of all, it's going to be triaged. In this case, this one was triaged as a coding task, as most of them will be. It then creates a background document to assist the planning process. So even before we go out to Claude Code via the CLI, we create this background document, which we then send to Claude Code. And that helps Claude Code actually in its task of creating a detailed plan document for this task. So in this example, the free trial offer components weren't updating properly in the live build. And so to actually generate the plan document that we're then going to run to actually fix the problem, we sent this background document to Claude Code telling it everything that we know, or a high-level summary of what we know about this particular project, so that Claude Code goes in already knowing this stuff and doesn't have to go and kind of prime itself from scratch. That then gets generated into a plan document, a requirements document up here. And this is what Claude Code sent back for this one. So you can see, just how much information there is in here. So it created 30 different tasks, numbered tasks in order, and gave us a bunch of the different code snippets that it thinks that we ought to put in here. And so when we come back into our task, we're able to simply copy and paste the prompt. And what that will do is it will copy a highly optimized prompt onto my clipboard, where if I go take a look at what I just copied, we can see that I have a 550 line or so prompt here. And so in here we have all the information about the background document that we had already passed in. We also have additional prompting that helps guide Claude Code or whatever agentic AI coding assistant you're using through the implementation and what to expect within this prompt. But further down here we have the actual plan document itself, and then any additional instructions that I have given it. So over time I've figured out it needs to be told how to use the right toast and the right jest and all that kind of stuff. And so typically when I'm actually building stuff in TaskDemon, I am typing a few sentences into the chat here. I am then waiting a few minutes for it to go ahead and blow this up into a full-blown plan document, and then I click one button to copy this into my clipboard, and I paste it into Claude Code, and I watch it do its thing. And you can see why a prompt of this kind of size, 500 lines, or however many lines it turns out to be, has a far, far higher chance of being done properly than had I simply typed this into Claude Code instead. Okay, to wrap things up, let's go take a look at BragDoc. We can see that the characterization process is just about ready to be complete. All right, I cut it here. I'm not going to wait for this to continue doing the final document. Sometimes Claude is a bit slower than other times, and I guess right now it's taken 5 minutes and I don't want to wait. So we're going to skip this final piece of characterization for BragDoc, and we're going to go ahead and import these GitHub issues that already exist. So in GitHub there were 3 already, not very many, so I know I've got to add GDPR. I wanted to go and change the left nav a little bit and get a notification email. And so what happens when we click that import button is immediately it's going to go and start doing the whole triage, background document preparation and planning process. And these updates get live streamed into the UI, as we can see right here. So already in the background, all 3 of these have been triaged. All 3 of them are clearly coding tasks, so all of them will have been given a coding triage. And now if I click into one of these things, we can see that we're actually in the planning phase already. So although this ticket's only a few seconds old, we can see it was made into a triage ticket. The background document is being prepared for it. So this background document is based on the characterization that we just did together live on this video. I didn't tell it any of this information. It's gone and figured out all the information for the characterization and then made this background document for this particular ticket, which is adding the GDPR compliance thing. If we go into our different CLI agents now, we can see, we can see that there are various tasks being performed based on these new tickets that are coming in. So in this one, for example, you can see that we're running 2 plans simultaneously. This is the BragDoc CLI agent running. It's finished one of the plans already, another one is still running. And so by the time we come back into the UI over here, we should see that these bottom 2 are already planned and ready for implementation. within a minute or so, a couple of minutes of actually importing it. So really I want to look at the GDPR one because that's the more interesting one. But if we take a quick look at one of the other plans, send an email notification when someone signs up. The main thing here is I get this copy prompt button, which is the thing that I click on, and I can just paste that into Windsurf here just to see what is going to get pasted. Normally I go paste this into Claude Code, but in this particular case I have 214 lines of prompt that's been created with a bunch of information about how to go and create this thing with numbered items that the AI should go and do it in order. So that's what TaskDemon does for you. That's how it blows up these simple prompts into really, really detailed prompts that are tailored to your project via the characterization process that has been done automatically for you. Go check it out at taskdemon.ai. It is launching today, Monday, April the 14th. Knock yourselves out.